Good morning, everybody. Good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I had somebody mention in the comments on one of my videos, why don't I put the distances and measures and things in the common worldwide metric system instead of using the American feet, pounds, inches, and miles thing. I always have used that in Dungeons & Dragons, so that is true to me because it's an American-centric game. Most of my audience is American, so I'm not kowtowing to Americans. That's just the way I play the game. So if I was changing the way that I measure things and list things in my videos, which I used to do actually a couple of times, nobody really mentioned it, that would be changing what I do to suit everyone else, which is kind of the point that people are trying to make against using the American system. So it's kind of hypocritical if I were to do that. So I generally don't. And as I say, the majority of my audience is American. So yeah, it's just the way it is. Hi everyone, how's it going? Hey Caleb, meme boy. Oh, memes. Yeah, today, hail Vector. Today is definitely meme day, and the reason why I'm talking about how the EU law changes affect my channel and other things is the topic of the day. Oh, that's okay, Ricky. Anybody who's playing D&D has got a free pass to not watch my live stream. That's perfectly fine. Hey, Amanda. Manny, you've got my father. Hey, ex-boyfriend. Hey, Justin. So last night, there was various people who were posting. One of the most interesting posts was a video by Count Dankula or something like that. He was actually at the EU when the voting was taking place on Article 13 and Article 11. Which directly affect how the internet works in regards to copyrights and people being able to post links to other articles that they don't own. And essentially what this article does, he said, and I quote, it was a big room full of boomers. He's referring to the older generation, baby boomers. He spoke to many of them. They didn't actually know what they were voting on or what its implications were because they just don't understand its widespread effect on the internet. And creative outlets like YouTube and news aggregate sites and things like that. So they trialed this same set of laws in Spain, and Google News actually pulled out of Spain and never went back, even when they ended it. So it doesn't work, and they've just voted it into power without any of the amendments that they had hoped to pass through. So they just passed it through whole cloth, and then they stood around congratulating themselves and cheering and clapping and things. Essentially what it is it's large corporations who are attempting to stifle the free exchange of information and things. So they're essentially trying to encircle and close off the internet so that they can gatekeep all information flow so that they can make money out of all of it, essentially. It doesn't actually affect my channel overly much because I'm a Dungeons & Dragons channel, and the artwork and stuff like that I upload into my videos is all around Dungeons & Dragons and fantasy. Wizards of the Coast has got a policy which is, as long as I'm providing this material free to the public, which is essentially what I do. Like, I can make money off it, but they have a more open sort of copyright agreement with the general public in their open license for the use of Dungeons & Dragons material. So I can quote pages and listings and stuff out of their books and things like that, news artwork and stuff, as long as I'm essentially promoting the hobby for everyone and not locking it up behind a paywall. So it's an exact opposition really to what the EU agreement was all about. Yeah, I have no idea what Count, obviously Count Dankula is not somebody that I agree with his policies at all, but I watch any information source, so I don't care where the news is coming from, because I believe that you need to communicate, or you need to understand people with an opposing point of view rather than completely shutting down all communication or understanding of them, because that's how conflicts start. Essentially, the first step in having a peaceful world is being able to listen to people that you don't agree with, essentially. And in this particular case, he was the man on the floor, on the scene, when the actual voting took place. So he had his is an eyewitness account. He was literally posting the video, live streaming from the EU headquarters, and making jokes about how anybody who argues that the EU is not interested in a globalist attitude, like getting the whole world under their control. In the public square of their headquarters there's a large round stone monument, which they call the United World. So yeah, it's definitely a world organization for taking over everything. If the EU had their way, they would certainly take over America and everywhere else. Hey, Greenscythe. I did watch a video of his about how to identify a thought on the internet and what incel means and stuff, and I actually found that quite informative because I didn't really know what the hell it was all about. So, you know, all personal opinions aside, he does provide information per se in a way which is easy for everybody to digest, and his accent is cool. As for what he actually does, I don't care, honestly. I'm not a subscriber to his channel. The Nine Hells would be happy with this development, honestly. They would be more than happy for more rules and strictures in place around information flow, for sure. More bureaucracy is always the way to go, always green lit. And yeah, I agree, the EU is run by mind flayers. It's absolutely, yeah, baby boomers who have no idea what the fuck the internet is for, just voted on a law which cripples quite a few, like, large sites like YouTube and Google and things like that. They've already got AIs and things like that, and human peer review and things which self-moderates and controls what is uploaded and what is shared. So copyright and stuff is already enforced on YouTube. Anybody who has a concern about anything that's on my channel or anybody else's can lodge a copyright claim or a copyright strike or something like that against the channel. I have never had any copyright strikes against my channel. I've been contacted by numerous artists and things who have who've featured in my videos, and they've been more than happy with the way that I've reacted to any sort of concerns they have that I'm taking their material or anything, because I will promote anybody who reaches out to me. I'm definitely a supporter of people who are creative in the industry. I in no way use the artwork and say that it's my own. I even put my own artwork in my videos and never even mention the fact that it's my stuff, because I just treat it like everybody else's. So yeah, that's the entire point of the thing. The artwork goes along with the subject that I'm talking about, and the artists are drawing and creating stuff, usually for paid commissions and things, for games and things like that, which are related to the hobby that we're talking about in the first place. So promoting one bit of fantasy artwork promotes the entire hobby and gets everybody interested in it, and essentially I'm talking about stories and things like that. So it's good for everybody. This thing with the EU, it threatens any use of any sort of other material. So essentially, it really empowers companies which do nothing but specialize in creating copyright strikes and stuff against everybody else. And there was a very public case the other day with PewDiePie getting copyright striked by a Twitch streamer, and because he basically mentioned he had a tiny news clip, like a clip of her performance, you could say, that he was talking about. And so yeah, she basically copyright striked him out of spite, and she got a company that does nothing but that to target him, which turned out to be a bad idea in her case, because, you know, he's got a massive following of millions of people, and they turned on her like a pack of wolves. So that was a bit unfortunate, and I certainly don't agree with that sort of mob justice, but in that particular case, it was well deserved. Always lightens your mood to mix D&D with politics. Well, we are talking about the forces of evil, and this is how it starts. The force, like when you get organisations like the EU who are trying to, they're trying to codify, they're trying to create a new network of laws that enforce a social dynamic which is not necessarily real or true or reflective of everybody's views. So. And what's more is this law is being passed by people who are ignorant of what it actually means. So if you ask them, the people who are voting on these laws, what they actually imply, they wouldn't know because they haven't read it, you know. They haven't read it, they just passed it into power. Yeah, so let's see how it goes, eh? I think the EU is going to come down in a screaming heap, honestly. I think there's going to be something like a French Revolution and heads are literally going to roll. Because at the moment, there's this authoritarianism, which is very clear in what the EU is doing. The people who live in the EU are not happy about it. Nobody's happy. It's Thatcherite control and just a grey and bleak future that they're building, where everything is red tape and bureaucracy, and it's horrific. Nobody's having a good time. Yeah, we end up right back where we started. The EU is run by Dero, it's true. Crazy. Madness. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it is run like clockwork, but it's a clock that if you fall between the gears, you're going to be ground to a paste. Hey, it's AJ back again with another. This week, what am I currently working on? I'm finally doing another character class video. I started working on it ages ago, and I'm sorry for the people that they've been months and months waiting for it. But I'm currently writing up the script for the video on the sorcerer. So yeah, and it's kind of tricky because I'm trying to look at all the different versions of the sorcerer that exist, all the different things that they can do. Warlocks are also really difficult in that video that I made, because obviously you miss out on stuff, particularly Unearthed Arcana or playtest type versions. So I try and be fair and inclusive of everything. Sorcerer is a little bit easier because they're all pretty much, most of it's pretty much included in the player's handbook. There are various options and things which got playtested as well. A new character class video. It's true, Bryce was. Don't forget, everybody, this is a monetized channel, and you can super chat me if you want to get my attention, or just, you know, support me and buy me better quality coffee or like pizza. What's my favorite character class? Today, I'm going to say that the Warlock is my favorite character class, because I was looking at some Warlock stuff for somebody else, and the fact that you can have a Celestial Patron as a Warlock Patron. So I thought somebody was asking me about this, and I suggested, why not, if you're thinking about playing an Azamar in Waterdeep, why not play an Azamar who's got a Karin as a Warlock Patron, and play the Unearthed Arcana playtest Celestial Pact Patron. And they're like, I was thinking about playing a Cleric. So it's like, well, yeah, there you go. That's not your cue, Bryce. No, you are not obligated to give me super chats. In fact, you've got a free pass for no super chats for months and months, thanks to your generosity. Go to Quebec and pick up some maple syrup. Warlocks are dumb, especially Fey Warlocks who have Titania as the Summer Court as their patron. Wait for it. I'm waiting. Your mum is making a custom class called the City Druid. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I like the idea of city rangers as well. Hey, William. Like rangers that specialize in an urban environment. Absolutely, why not? Particularly for things like Ravnica coming up. That's definitely yeah. Pizza and coffee, he is a nerd. No, that would be cheese snacks and Mountain Dew. For a role-playing nerd, anyway. For the most part, I've been eating rice and tuna. And like last night, I splurged out and I made myself some toasted cheese sandwiches. But I've been eating very healthy lately, and I can definitely feel the difference. What is an example of a way that you would include political intrigue in a D&D campaign setting? Well, noble families for the one thing. Like, Dungeons and Dragons is not medieval Europe. It's not the Dark Ages. It's an entirely different kettle of fish. It's more like a modern world where technology took a different path because they have magic. So they don't need to develop a lot of the technologies that we have. And also the population dynamics have not been affected by things like the Black Plague and It's a different mix of continents and stuff, so the migrations and movements of people are quite different. In the Forgotten Realms, you've got representations of almost every single civilization that it has existed or currently exists in the world that we know, represented in the different factions of humanity which are spread out across the continent of Faerun and various other places, Zakara and Mazdaca and Karatua. And even Aussie, although that's an unexplored continent that I'd love to see somebody make a sourcebook on. So political intrigue takes the form of, it's a feudalist society because you've got pockets of different types of civilization around the place. They're separated by a large amount of land. Like the land area of the Forgotten Realms of the continent of Faerun is huge. Like you can snugly fit America into most of it. Actually, you can fit all of America into it. So, and it follows the same sort of climate and things like that as well. The climate ranges, so it's kind of helpful sometimes when you're visualizing Faerun to overlay a map of continental United States in there, just to give you some idea of what the climate is like and what you could expect to be growing in that particular area. And yeah, so you've got in places like Kalimshan or the deserts of Anarok and things like that, you've got places which are clustered around places where resources like water and stuff are. So you have, and also these places were once caliphates which were ruled by genies. So their civilization has followed along that line of ruling elites of people who have the most money, essentially, most money, most magical power, that sort of thing. And they, people who come from, it's almost like Harry Potter with the wizards and the muggles, you know. So it's almost a mix of that, where you have places which are people of influence wield a lot of power, and people who are underneath them are serfs and bonded land people who live on the land but don't own it. Same sort of thing in Cormier. It's a feudal system, so you have a kingdom. You've got the people who own the castle and operate the castle, are in charge of everything and to tell the soldiers what to do. And the people who live on the land basically farm it and provide a tithe of what they produce for the castle and the castle residents and stuff, in order for them to be under the protection of those people. So politics comes down to people of influence always, and not necessarily people who get their popularity from people voting for them or anything like that. It's just they just assume power because of their bloodline and things. It's less of a Western-centric point of view these days. But if you look at like royal families and things like that, or dynastic situations like in America right now with celebrity culture. So if you're a Kardashian, you've got a certain amount of influence, you know, whether it's deserved or not. And it doesn't really have a hell of a lot to do with your personal ability. If you're a Paris Hilton, you're well known, but not necessarily somebody who would be voted into a position of influence. But they kind of were just through being infamous or being well known. Hey Adam, another glorious day on Toril. That's true. Also, I don't know if Trey is here. I might have missed out on the explosion, so I'll just cover that tradition before before somebody tells me that I haven't done it. Your snow elf wizard became an archlich. Interesting. How would I stat a napalm fireball? Well, it's basically something that just sort of... nice, there you go. Explosion! Do we read upside down in New Zealand? No, we do not. Tigers. You troll. He is here. Yep, that's true. So yeah, the politics in the Forgotten Realms it comes down to people of influence and power. So wizards and things like that. Obviously, nobody's going to argue with somebody who could, like, if a Kardashian could essentially immolate somebody on the spot with a wave of their hand and their warlock patron, poof, and they zap somebody. That's an entirely different kettle of fish. Is it too late to give an intelligent weapon example? No, I'm going to carry on making those magic item videos for a while, actually, because they're fun to make, and I really like the fact that I get to showcase other people's ideas in the comment section, and they seem to be quite popular. So, yeah, it's definitely a good series to have, and very inspiring for game stuff, which is the entire point of my channel, really, is to educate and inspire people about D&D and the stories, and just entertain. Talking of dreams or nightmares, I had a dream last night that I was invited by Mike Mills and Jeremy Crawford to play in a D&D game, like an official Wizards of the Coast D&D game. And the entire dream was me trying to figure out what character class I was going to play. And I saw a sample of them playing the game, and it was amazeballs. I can't even describe it. It was quite amazing. But I had a very, very, very D&D game where, yeah, oh boy, it was very D&D dream, I should say, where when they started talking about what was going on in the game, I was fully immersed in the situation in a dreamscape. So I got to see the characters and things going on. It was bizarre. So yeah, my dream was wish fulfillment. Turns out that subconsciously I want to go and play a game with those guys. How epic would it be? Whoop, I missed that. What? How would you run an epic campaign where the characters have become gods, regardless of game system? At this level, you may not even use one. Well, Mechanic Silo, we have kind of run that sort of game, but you get to like level 15 to level 20 where you're in the playing arena where you're playing with demigods and Empyreans and things like that. But you don't really take on gods. If you are running a campaign where you become gods, it's an entirely different system from D&D, really. And as you say, yeah, the rules don't really matter. In which case, I would say it comes down to mostly management and bookkeeping, conflicts, followers, that sort of thing. So resource management. It's almost like a board game in a way, where you're dealing with multiple different places. So an example would be like a cooperative game of Arkham Horror, where you have to close off planar rifts and portals to otherworldly dimensions and things in order to keep things stable, so that your power base of followers and things are not adversely affected by demonic invasions and things. So it's a much bigger picture, essentially. It's a much larger scope where quite often you don't need to do things directly. You just send in agents and avatars to do the work for you. And you're working with a bunch of strictures and limitations which keep things stable. So doesn't allow the ego of one particular god or another to destabilize things for other gods, because otherwise you get conflicts which can bring it all crashing down. So that's how I would do it. Ever hear of Warlock of the Hordelands? It's a setting that looks real weird. Elves that die in their 20s are trying to wipe out humanity. Can't be priests of gods. What's your view? I don't have a view on that because I have no experience of it. Sounds interesting. How about an intelligent war scythe created by Verdant Grove druids who can only deal subdual damage to living things, but it's devastating to undead, negative energy creatures? Yeah, absolutely. That's very valid. A toilet mimic. Oh, that would be nasty. Yeah, Orcus has got an interesting, like that scepter of Orcus that's got a skull on the end of it. There's an interesting story behind that skull, which I talk about in the video, that was once a mortal champion of light. And nobody really knows what happened to it, but Orcus took the skull and crafted a wicked weapon of evil out of it. So, yeah, maybe there is an element of, like, for instance, in Palladium Rifts, in the Atlantean source book, there's a lot of magical items which are symbiotes and fey creatures which are trapped inside wands and stuff, like in a vial. You've got this poor fairy who's having its energy siphoned off it. So that sort of thing. Mimic stairs. A gold piece mimic. Yeah. There's a monster in I think Tome of Beasts, actually. There's a monster which is a gold piece, which, yeah. And also in older editions of D&D and like some old source books and stuff, like the Haunted Halls of Evening Star has got a gold piece monster. Yeah. colder than a witch's tit. It's a saying that we use in New Zealand too. It's an overcast day outside here in New Zealand as we're just heading into springtime. There's flowers all over the place. Birds are outside fighting over there, over the mating rights. Dragon breath wands, yeah, like from Constantine, for sure. I've also confirmed my move-out date from this place here. So the landlord is coming through and, well, the landlady, the real estate agent is showing people through the place every now and then, which is kind of distracting. So I'm going to be moving to the orchard on the 29th this month. Yeah, you guys will be heading into winter over in the States, I suppose. Fall. Halloween. How was the game for the Discord admins? It was good. So we're going to continue on. I think Jada is going to be running a game for us, and then I'm going to be running a game, a long-term game for not just the admins, but some other people as well, some newbies to D&D. We'll see how they like it. And when I'm living out on the orchard, I'm going to be doing a lot more online gaming and running games for people. So yeah, absolutely join the Discord, because that's where I'll be doing it from. I also had a chat with the internet providers on the place at the orchard, and it's looking okay. There is an option there for 20 megabytes per second upload speeds, which they seem to think is fine, which will probably be okay for like voice chats and stuff, and I will probably be able to live stream. But when I was at my parents' house there, they just use a old copper line ADSL, not VDSL, and I couldn't live stream. It was completely unreliable. So hopefully I'll be able to continue doing these live streams, because I really enjoy it, talking with all you guys. You got an even dumber accent lined up for the next game. Good, good, good. They call it fall because the leaves fall down. Yes, I'm aware of this. Yeah, we call it autumn. We don't say fall because most of the trees, the native trees in New Zealand, aren't deciduous. There's a few, but the climate doesn't get particularly bad here, so we don't really have the deciduous situation. Newfies have always been a bit odd in Anglophone culture. Okay. Nope. Shoggoth Lord is a patron. Well, Shoggoth, I don't know if they would act as a patron to a warlock, honestly. Never say never, but strictly going by the Lord, they probably wouldn't. You call it what? Herbst. Herbst? I had some Scandinavian guy telling me that I was pronouncing Lindorms wrong. I was like, I can't do anything about how the Dungeons and Dragons names it in the books, man. What do you want? Didn't mention anything about the pronunciation of any of the other Nordic stuff that I put in there, which I suppose that was his badge of I got it right. Yay, tick. Currently playing a Vampire Masquerade game. Interestingly enough, the Onyx Games is producing some... I was just watching a advanced screening of an interview for them from the Pair of Geeks channel for Con+1, which is coming up pretty soon. Those of you who are interested in Con+1, definitely look it up, or look up the Pair of Geeks YouTube channel, or catch up with Becky or Jason on Facebook and message them about Con+1 and getting involved in things. And there's also a Con+1 website, which I'll have to find a link for. So Con+1 is a online gaming convention featuring people playing games 24 hours all around the world, and also various events and panels and things like that. There's a lot of prizes and giveaways, which you can pick up some really nice stuff, and it's a charity event for Child's Play. So this is the same charity which is PAX and stuff runs charities for. So this is kids who are sick, who don't have access to games and entertainment. Essentially, it's a charity for kids who have illnesses and things, and they're stuck away from home or whatever, and gives them some distraction from their situation by providing some entertainment for them in the form of board games, video games, role-playing games, that sort of stuff. AJ, you have any ideas in future to please few of us Slavic folks with some sloglavs or zemes? Maybe, I don't know. It depends on what sort of monsters just pop in, I suppose. Become a Slard? What's your opinion on the Witcher casting chat? I have no idea. First of all, I wouldn't call the Unicorn or the Aboleth weak. And Aboleth is a Warlock patron for sure, definitely. Unicorns, probably not. That's not what they're interested in. They're all about mobility and traveling wherever they want. So a pact with a Warlock would represent sort of tying them down to a particular creature. One thing that you could have is, say, it's a spirit of a warlock, of a unicorn which has been trapped somehow, and reaches out to create a pact with a warlock to go about freeing itself, or if it's doomed to its fate and can't free itself without passing on, dying essentially, then it may look to create a pact with a warlock to still act for the good in the world while it's trapped in its prison, so to speak. So you could sort of wrangle it that way. Need some advice on need some advice on how to handle a player for my Spelljammer campaign. He uses psionics for most. I'm not interested in arbitrating your situations with your characters and your players in your game. Just sort it out yourself. He's your friend. Corinne Patron, yep, definitely. Recently rewatched some video on Grast. In my opinion, he seems to lean more towards neutral evil than chaotic evil. At the very least, his chaos is flavoured with a touch of neutrality. I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. He's all about pleasing himself, really, to a very destructive illithid unicorns. The reason why illithids target humanoids is because the seromorphosis treatment doesn't really generally work on non-humanoids because of body mass. So the larval stage of the illithid, basically the tadpole, has only got so much oomph that it can use to transform the body, and if it doesn't do it, if it can't get all of the body transformed within a certain time, it dies. So essentially, the most humanoids, and it also doesn't work on giants and things unless some extraordinary means has been used. The difference would be, say, Thune, where they use... Thune is a kind of a cyber psychic entity from the Far Realm that they brought back with them, and the Thune symbiotes are kind of like a AI cybernetic organism which takes over living flesh and rearranges it. And so, yeah, I'll be doing a video on the Mind Flayers of Thune at some future point, because it's really good, and I really like that from 4th edition. Yeah, Obox is coming up for sure. In fact, I'm getting a better understanding of Obox as I carry on with the Demon series. Would I rather go to the Abyss, Nine Hells, or Hades for the rest of eternity? Definitely the Nine Hells. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's not an issue. I'm just a newer DM, and I find ways to make challenging for him without having him do the same thing over and over. Don't mind the silent class. I just need ideas. Oh well, okay. I would say sit down with him and say have a think tank session where he presents ideas that he wants to adventure through with his character. So say, look, best case scenario, what would be your idea of the best game you could possibly play? And then take note of all the ideas he comes up with, and essentially give him what he wants, but don't. So make his rewards and his goals available, but they're kind of challenging and frustrating to get to. So that's the whole idea behind creating stories for people that they want. So their character sheet and the background story and stuff is a list of things that they want to accomplish in the game. And when you're making a character in whatever game that you want to play in, essentially look at your character sheet, look at your character's motivations and say, okay, this character has got these sets of goals and things that they want, and this set of challenges and things. Do I, as a player, will I find it satisfying to accomplish these things? And will I find it cathartic and interesting? And if not, then it's probably not a character that you're going to want to enjoy playing. And it's certainly not a character that is going to be compelling for the other people at the table, because if you're not interested in playing it, then they're not interested in, obviously your performance at the table is going to be lackluster, which creates a lackluster game. So make an exciting character that you really want to play, and set goals for yourself that are also really exciting and interesting, that you actually give a shit about. This is why you shouldn't come up with characters. I'm not saying never, but if the majority of your characters have no ties to any existing organization, background, or family in your game, so essentially they are hobos, as in they don't have a community or any support structure or anybody they answer to or any responsibilities to anybody, then they are extremely difficult for DMs to hook into a story, because if they don't have anybody they care about, then they just go wherever they want and do whatever they want. So effectively you've built a character which is disruptive to story. And the idea that sitting down at a role-playing table for an extended campaign is to build a story that everybody's involved in and the DM can craft for you. So essentially what you're doing is you're saying, here's my character, it's an agent of chaos that I'm putting into the game because I don't like the idea of being tied to anything or having to answer to anybody or having people that I care about that I'm working towards. Essentially, it's a selfish exercise in fuck you. That's that's what a murder hobo character is like. It's like, oh, I just want to kick down doors and kill stuff. I don't really care about where I am or what's going on or the world or anything that you've crafted. I couldn't care less. So if you don't care, then it's going to be a lackluster character. Essentially, build ties with your DM and with the other players around. So tie your character with other characters, tie your character with the world setting and the background that your DM has presented to you. This is why session zeros is such a good idea. That you sit down and you talk about the game world and you craft a character that fits that game world, or at least craft a character that can easily slot into a game world if you're making it in advance. So if your paladin is dedicated to a particular religious order, leave those spaces blank, and then it can tie in directly. It's like, well, what's the major church in this area? Well, that would be the clerics of Torm. It's like, okay, so I'm a paladin of Torm. So, yeah. If you're having a lot of trouble interesting your player in whatever's going on in your world, then essentially they need to craft a character which is tied into that world somehow. So if the only place that they can get their spells, for instance, is by learning them from a particular institution, they have to return to that institution to get those spells, or they have to be in communication with them. There may be particular members of that order who are working against that character becoming too powerful because they see them as a threat to their position. There could be every time they communicate, every time they level up and they want to get new spells, they may need to return there, and then they get new missions, such as we've just received word that this ancient body of text and lore and rituals has been discovered, or a hint towards its location, the Hamanoptera, so we've discovered the location of the city of the dead in the Anarok Desert. We need you to go there and recover this this vital piece of lore to recover the spells of Animate Dead that have been lost for centuries. So you might have it so that certain spells in your game don't exist in the D&D world, and your character is actually fundamental in discovering them again. So spells like, imagine if there was no polymorph spells and your character had an opportunity to go and rediscover polymorph spells at great risk to themselves. But imagine the renown they would have, particularly if they kept that information secret, so that sort of thing. Or, magical items that your character can go and get to become a legendary figure. So only a certain amount of people have ever had a Vorpal sword before. It's a named item. And knowing where that sword is, or discovering where that hero fell, or whatever, and then recovering that sword, you become a legendary figure. So that's compelling and interesting. Yeah, players who aren't interested in the world that you created are immensely frustrating. You could say that they're playing Dungeons and Dragons wrong, because it's a cooperative storytelling game. If you're not interested in other people's stories, then you're being selfish and you're not playing D&D right, I could say. It's almost antisocial. So they are frustrating, but there are ways to get around it. So essentially you hook into their selfishness and you say, okay, well, if you could run this game, what would you do to make it interesting for your character? I challenge you. And if they go, I don't know, then you say, well, I'm not interested in your satisfaction then. Because if you don't know what satisfies you, then how the fuck am I supposed to know? So you just throw it back at them. You say, look, put yourself in my shoes as a DM with your character. What would you do? And then when they give you suggestions about what they would do, you think, okay, seriously consider it for a minute. Look at it from their point of view and get them to look at it from your point of view. And so that's how you reach a compromise and understanding. So I hope that helped. But I get asked this question a lot. Like everybody who runs any sort of channel where they're giving advice on games and things, they get asked a lot of times, I've got this problem player character. And it's like, well, it's not the player character you have a problem with, it's the player you have a problem with. Yeah, anybody can run any sort of character. And if they're a good player, then they can run it easily. And a good DM with a good player will run anything. The better your relationship with the player is, the less the rules matter. You can play any sort of story with any sort of person as long as you have a good understanding and a good relationship, good communication, and a good understanding of what each other's enjoyment level is. The problem is, yeah, when somebody's acting selfishly or just doesn't give a shit. Same sort of thing with a DM who wants to run a particular type of story and they don't give a shit what sort of character you have. They're going to run that story no matter what you do. That can be a problem too. And that's where people will leave your game in droves. People who are like overly controlling or overly interested in the rules of the game, and they're not willing to compromise at all. It's like, well, the player's handbook says it's 25 feet and you're clearly 30 feet away. That could be problematic as well. It's like, well, we're going to really argue the level of moisture in the atmosphere in this dungeon, or the convection currents, or exactly how long it takes for somebody to asphyxiate in an environment with 5% oxygen. You know, I've sat in a session, not actually playing in this particular session, where they spent like 15 minutes figuring out how long it would take to tunnel through a certain amount of rock to get from one room to another. It was not fun. What was that? Linguistic oversight? But then again, most people don't realize there's a huge difference between an ST and a DM. Storyteller, are you talking about? Is that what ST means? Yeah, exactly, Dragonlord. People who are running a game and pay no attention to what the character is like, what the player is trying to do with their character, they will find that those people leave their game, and it is their fault, for sure. It's a cooperative game, as in more than one people operating. What would happen? Become a half dragon. Wondered what would happen if you used the blood of multiple dragon types, or even the blood of other creatures like a 12-headed hydra. Well, a hydra is not a dragon, for one thing; it's a serpent. But in the regards to becoming a multiple, like a half dragon by infusing dragon blood, I would say that it could even be random. So it might not actually matter what the chromatic color of that or metallic color of that dragon was in the first place. It would be influenced by the motivations and soul of your character. So if you're a chaotic evil character and you get infused with the blood of a red dragon, or maybe a green dragon, or maybe a silver dragon, you turn into a black dragon, half dragon, because that's your character's alignment. See what I mean? Hey Joe. Yep, that would be correct. A storyteller, heavily narrative focused. They're going to tell their story whether you want them to or not. And the DM is actually a dungeon master. Yeah. So, like, you can tell a story that is going on in the world around you, but the pivotal point between being a dungeon master and a storyteller is that the story can be influenced by what the player characters are doing. So the idea is always to give the players agency. So agency means they are active participants and shape the world around them. So what they do actually makes a huge difference. And I get asked this question a lot as well, which is if there's a big conflict going on, like your castle's under siege, or there's a war between two armies and the player characters are stuck in the middle, or they're on one side or the other, what can they actually do? Obviously, a game where they're put frontline and they're just fighting wave after wave of minions, which are not really up to their standard, is going to be boring. It's just going to be a hack, with them managing the resources, and they just retreat and recover and go back into it again. It would be a rare instance where that is a very interesting situation for players to be in, unless you're just like the shit as a player, as a dungeon master, and you can really narrate that to great effect, which I'm saying you definitely can. There are people who can storytell that sort of adventure fantastically. Particularly if they're really good at narrating gore and just the atrocities and bloodshed of warfare. But what I suggest is better is if the player characters who are definitely a cut above the norm, so they're possessed of extreme abilities, Olympic level athlete type abilities, you put them in situations where the commanders of the army recognize their significant use as a surgical weapon which can take out objectives which influence the overall conflict of whatever armies are clashing. So you put them in situations where they need to defend a pivotal part of the defenses of the castle, or they need to go and take out the trebuchets at a distance, so they can stealth their way there past small groups of enemy forces. So they need to take them out before they can summon the troops and the entire army turns in their direction. And when they take out the trebuchets or battering rams, or take out the supply train of the army and things like that. Like, if you took out the supply train of an army, how long can an army operate with no food or resources or bandages or healing potions or anything like that? A few days before they completely run out of food. Yeah, it's quite significant, like the effect that would have on a large-scale battle, particularly if it's a siege. So they're trying to cut off the castle's supply of food and water and things like that. And even if you have magical abilities to provide good berries and things like that, they'd need to have a huge number of druids or clerics and things to provide for everybody in a castle, like every single person and all of their livestock and things like that. So eventually they would be put to a situation where they just don't have the resources. Or you might even have the player characters involved in an interplanar adventure with a siege going on at the same time. So for instance, the wizard inside that castle has opened up a portal to Bytopia, and the player characters are tasked with going to Bytopia to close that portal or cut off the supply to continue the siege in a mundane fashion within that world, cutting off their extra dimensional access. So you could have an adventure where the player characters go all over the place in the multiverse because this wizard is trying to find a way to stop the siege and continue supplying them with food and medical supplies and things like that, and additional forces and troops. So yeah, and you may actually get planeswalker. That's basically what a planeswalker adventure for like Ravnica and all those Magic the Gathering type things would be like. So interesting. missed out on some questions there. What happens if you use Tiamat's or Bahamut's blood for the infusion process? There is, I think it was in 4th edition, maybe, or perhaps it was 3.5. There was the God blood. Whereabouts was that? I think I was just looking at this the other day. This is an old monster manual, so 3.5. See if I can just do it from memory. I don't think it was either one of these. Was this Monster Manual 5, the one with the blue dragon on the cover? See if memory serves. Spawn of Tiamat? Yeah. So essentially you'd become a spawn of Tiamat of some kind. But there's also the God blood infused. Oh boy, there's some great stuff in here. Blood hulks, bloodfire oozes, the Nashral demons, the Whisper demons, all the different elves and Githyanki, gnolls. There's a lot of great stuff in this one. Yuan-Tis, Yugoloths. Oh, so many old books. Story time. God kissed, yeah. There's God's blood infused. Oh, absolutely, Warif. I'm looking forward to it. Like, I am very enthused about, yeah, the Godslayer. I'm very enthused about Ravnica. And Eberron. I'm very enthused about Eberron as well. Close to an hour, yeah, true. Almost there. Run out of coffee. A couple of gulps left. After this, I'm going to go and have some food, and I'm going to continue making scripts, trying to get as much work done before tomorrow when I have people coming through to look at the house. And then, yeah, another week and a bit. Another 10 days, or 14 days, 16 days. 16 days, and then I'm out of here. I have to move house. I've got a couple of videos in the bank which have been available for patrons to watch before everybody else. There's one on encounters, and there's the other one on planeswalkers, actually. So I talk about what are planeswalkers in Dungeons and Dragons. So if anybody wants to go and watch those now, you can go and be a patron. Donate $1 a month minimum. Most people donate like $1 per video, which is really great for me. It encourages me to produce more videos every month. So yeah. And there's not much to ask, I don't think. It certainly makes a big difference to me with the exchange rate, because I'm getting paid in American dollars. Obviously, it's about 1.5 New Zealand dollars, so to speak. They, yeah, Lingus Realisa, yeah, they're, well, in Faerun, you've got Mesopotamian and ancient sort of Egyptian, Middle Eastern. There's two waves of humanity that came over there which formed the Mulan racial group, and one of the more ancient empires of Faerun. So well before the Netherall Empire and the Nether Scrolls. And they had their own gods who have largely sort of gone out of existence mostly, but there's still avatars and things, and certainly artifacts in that far off part of the world, sort of south of Thay. Create coffee to make me stay. Well, super chats make me stay, but I haven't had any super chats today. Been a bit of a fail of a live stream, honestly. Interesting topics though. Sorry if I haven't gotten to everybody's questions. Yeah, I'm a sage. Well, the magic of Ravnica works the same way. It's the distribution and learning and application of the magic of Ravnica, which is going to be interesting. So essentially, they're not going to be reinventing Dungeons and Dragons just for Ravnica. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be crafting a setting where the use of the rule system of D&D is nuanced by what goes on there. Yeah, it was the Imaskari, ancient Imaska. No live stream is a fail. Well, no pizza for me. I blame the forces of evil. I blame the EU for, for the lack of donations, super chat donations. It's alright. Hey, Dragonlord, thank you. Dragons! What dragon would you like next, Dragonlord? I was thinking about the Styx dragon. Danny, what? Oh, and this should not fit in my comment, but are half-dragons accepted in elf drow humans? Were dwarf society or accepted by dragons, or are they hunted and despised? Are you saying are half-dragons accepted by dragon society? No, not really. Hey, thanks, Justin. Well, we're going to stream for slightly longer than an hour. Power of dragons compel me. So half-dragons are an interesting case in point because they're not very widespread. Like, they're very few and far between. And so the creation and the life and the attitudes towards that half-dragon are distinct to that half-dragon. They have their own story. It's unfair to create a generalized statement about what every dragon's attitude. Hey, thanks, Morgan. It's unfair to make any sort of generalized statement about what a dragon's attitude towards a half-dragon would be, because every dragon's different, every half-dragon's different. The interaction between those two is nuanced based on what their story is. Thanks, X-Poison. Thanks, everybody. So, yeah, I find it very difficult to answer that question because it's a very general question. And it would potentially nip in the bud any story ideas that people have for how those half-dragons operate. I suppose I've had a few questions about half-dragons lately, so maybe I should have a video where I talk about some of the more famous half-dragons and what their attitudes and stuff have been. Like, is it Last Mines of Fandelver? Or, no, it was one of the first adventures they made for 5th edition. Has got a half-dragon in there, and it's got their motivations listed. It's a bit of a slog reading through all that stuff, but, you know, I can do my best. There's certainly a lot of named half-dragons that have had some influence over the years in various stories. And half-dragons make really good bad guys and interesting good guys because they're different from Dragonborn, obviously. I don't know if they're going to do that, Warif, honestly. It's like a nuance, right? With the 5 different colors or the combination of colors. Like, I can certainly see how they work. And you could say that you could add to the game, much like the dragon marks in Eberron add to the game as a racial feat sort of thing. You could add that sort of background influence to your characters in Ravnica and other world settings where it's Magic the Gathering orientated. But bringing those stories into the fold of Dungeons and Dragons, really you're opening up a huge amount of storytelling ability and function, and all the different places. Like, yeah, you'll see what I mean with the video on the Planeswalkers when I release it later this month. If chaotic is an alignment, is it truly chaotic? Yeah, it's the attitude of it's anti-law, so it's nobody's going to tell me what to do. Anything could happen, sort of thing. It's chaos theory. Like if you take Jurassic Park, for instance, the mathematician, his attitude is everything's unpredictable. Like anything could happen. So his attitude was fundamentally chaotic, and his idea behind them trying to recreate dinosaurs and control them was like, you can't control it. Your entire attitude of lawfulness doesn't work. It doesn't apply in this particular situation, and it's going to bite you in the ass, I guarantee you. So he was arguing from the perspective of somebody who was convinced that the universe was chaotic, and he was chaotic, his behavior and actions, and he's like, well, you know, so he didn't pay much attention to the fact that there was a relationship between the two scientists, you know, who was hitting on her because he was like, well, you know, anything could happen. Maybe she'll find you more interesting. So he kind of ignored the social boundaries in that particular case, where they said, well, we're kind of together, you know, it's kind of a thing. So he was chaotic in alignment, and he was chaotic in attitude as well. So his worldview was chaotic. So it really, if you look at it that way. Recreate Dragons, AJ Pickett 2018. What? What did I say? When? You got to fight for your right to party, exactly. So, yeah. Some of my early Dragon videos are like the sound quality is really bad, and I'd like to probably redo some of those early Dragon videos and certainly make individual videos for the silver and the gold dragons, whereas before they were combined, which I don't think did them justice. When I started out making videos, the Dragon series was one of the first ones that I made, followed by the Giant series after that, and so my production values and my focus on making really in-depth videos about the lore of the dragons and things has improved greatly recently, you know, over the last couple of years. So I think, yeah, I will be remaking some of those videos at some point. I would think that someone who also used such a place or item to make bank, it is a safe means of gaining experience, who wouldn't take advantage of that. Half Lenorms, That's your favorite dragon. Cal's Renade. Yeah, well, so essentially Bahamut, he's a platinum dragon. So essentially it's like a silver dragon with a force breath weapon and multiple types of breath weapons. So you might have like a silver dragonborn type character who has access to 2 different types of breath weapon. And of course they've got a strong connection to their patron Bahamut. So if you had a platinum dragon warlock essentially, or a cleric or a paladin, that would be strongly influenced by a lawful alignment, but they wouldn't necessarily have to be that. It would just be like left to their, like, they may make choices in life, but they would probably fall towards the lawful alignment by default. What's my favorite meme type? What sort of meme do I make most often? Motivational poster memes, I'd say, are my favorite. Yeah. And the, you know, this is what my parents think I do, this is what my friends think I do, this is what I actually do, this is what I think I do. Those ones are always fun as well. And the join the battle memes are kind of good. I like those ones as well. Actually, I challenge everyone on the Discord server to post your favorite memes today in protest of the EU restrictions on Article 13. Post your memes. Post many, many memes. Let's go meme crazy while we can. A dragon that leads artificers and somewhat crazy wizards. Yeah, I love the idea of like really individual dragons who do strange things. Like the ones who collect a hoard of books, for instance. I had one of those in my last adventure. He was dead, but That was kind of funny. They're all freaked out. They're going towards a dragon lair, and it turns out that this dragon's dead already. It's like, what killed him? And nobody knows. All right, everybody. I'm officially taking my last gulp of coffee. That is a blend of Irish cream coffee and Italian morning blend, morning roast. So it's tasty and strong. Everything is a meme, yeah, kind of. Infidel! I would agree, Nicholas. That would be fantastic if a half radiant dragon could sustain themselves photovoltaically. So they're just like they have a short rest where they just like lie down on a rock or something, and just like they've got a spine that goes and it's like a photocell, and they just absorb sunlight, or they turn dark as they're absorbing sunlight. That'd be cool. Go into shadows. Dragon Bear Pig. It's crazy. Hey, Jake. All right, everybody. Farewell. Merry met. Have a good game. Have a chat with your players today about what they want in the game, or have a chat with your DM and express your desire about what you would like for your character to do. Most certainly, if you are in the EU, go and express your distaste to your local politicians about what has just happened. Go out and get yourself educated on what this could actually mean for the internet. And yeah. Go find a baby boomer today and tell them what Discord is. Catch you later, everyone.